This poem, called Homework by Allen Ginsberg, to the first dry read may seem very critical of many countries in the world, but is in fact mostly critical of the United States. The poem basically describes the way that the author would clean many of the blemishes of the world. It starts out saying, "If I were doing my laundry, I'd wash my dirty Iran, I'd throw in my United States, and pour on the ivory soap." The thing that first struck me when I read through the poem the first few times was throughout the entire poem he makes distinct marks about each area of the world or country and what he would exactly do, whether he clean it or wash it or scrub it. But in the first stanza he says, I'd throw in my United States," and I think by this he means he'd throw in our entire country, not because just one specific part of it may need cleansing, but all of it. And after the statement about the United States, he mentions throwing in ivory soap. And I wasn't quite sure what that was, and so I did a little research on it. And it's basically a type of soap bar that's been around for about 130 years. That's known for making skin very pure. So basically I made my observation that this means that he's going to throw in the ivory soap so he can purify the world, so that he can make things pure. In the second stanza, Ginsberg begins to talk about putting all of the birds and elephants back into the jungle. And I think in this particular line, he's talking about some of the issues in the rainforest, and how there's land being cut down, and how there's a lack of space left for these animals, and how they're being driven farther and farther away, or farther and farther toward towns and such, because of man. In the following line, Ginsberg writes about washing the Amazon River and the Gulf of Mexico, and I believe the meaning of this particular line is about the misappropriation of the bodies of water. In the Gulf of Mexico, there are countless oil rigs off the coast that spill oil into the Gulf every day and just wreak havoc on the environment. This poem was actually written back in 1980, just on the tail end of the oil and gas shortages of the 1970s, and so there was a great need for environmental action, and Ginsberg definitely was definitely an activist for that. To the Amazon, I read about a study that lists the Amazon as one of the larger contributors to pollution because of the boats and cities and basically little villages that live along it that cause a lot of pollution in that area. Again, Ginsberg is writing to tell the issues and problems with the misuse of these bodies of water. Now, before going on to the rest of the poem, I'd like to address kind of the writing style of the poem. It's a freestyle writing poem, which means that it doesn't really rhyme at the end of any stanza, or it doesn't have a particular pattern. And it shows that the writer isn't exactly organizing out his work so that it follows a particular format at the end of every line or stanza, but that his thoughts and feelings are simply flowed down onto the paper. And it truly reflects on the poem because it's rough, it's new, and it's meaningful. It's straight from the writer himself. And the more that you read this poem, or maybe it's the first time that you read it dryly through, you start seeing that in the very beginning it has sort of a light mood, playful mood, but then it turns dark really quickly. This is proved by line 6. It says, "Rub-a-dub-dub for Rocky Flats and Los Alamos, flush that sparky cesium out of Love Canal." This shows kind of a playful mood about the poem, but using the rub-a-dub-dub. But when you turn to lines such as then I'd throw Big Asia in one giant load and wash out the blood in Agent Orange, and dump the whole mess of Russia and China in the ringer, squeeze out the tattletale gray of U.S. Central American police state, and put the planet in the dryer and let it sit 20 minutes or eon until it came out. These lines are very suggestive. They suggest that there's more than just the playful poem towards the beginning, and there's more to it than what Ginsberg doesn't like about the world. These are much darker lines that have a deeper meaning about them. One particular line that I'd like to mention that I thought was very important is the line, "Then I'd throw Big Asia in one giant load and wash out the blood at Agent Orange." Uh, the important phrase in Agent Orange is when chemicals are used during the Vietnam War that were used to drive out Viet Cong soldiers from the jungle. Um, Basically, Americans sprayed this chemical over the rainforest where the Viet Cong were said to be hiding, where it killed pretty much all the vegetation and pushed all of these soldiers out. This line expresses Ginsberg's basic disgust for this kind of treatment of human beings and the rainforest and animals and really people for that matter. Another theme that's important is the actual metaphor the poem is using throughout the entire poem. Excuse me. He begins, continues, and ends with the metaphor of washing clothes. The poem is basically about washing away pollution, war, and violence, and the simple use of the metaphor washing clothes is relatable and can reflect what literally is meant by the country or place. Another line worth exploring is bleach the little clouds so snow returns white as snow. This line is important because when we think of clouds, we think of our dreams. We think of counting clouds, sleeping and whatnot, that our dreams are way up in the sky, but they're dangerous when they're black and they're tarred. But when you see these white puffy clouds in the sky, you think about dreaming and just a happy place and not a black place uh, like the clouds from pollution. The ending of this poem, I think, is really by far one of the strongest parts in the poem. It really stays with you as you finish it. It says, "Put the planet in the dryer and let it sit 20 minutes or an anon or an eon until it came out clean." To fully understand what the sentence means, you have to look up the definition of eon. Eon means an unforeseen period of time. The word also relates to words such as, basically, words relating to eon, words such as forever or infinity. So basically, what Ginsberg is trying to say here is that we should wash the world and let it dry forever. It's almost saying that the world should end, and that the world should never have the chance to commit the evils that it's committed again. And that's what makes this poem so powerful. The ending is almost counterproductive to the rest of the poem. The rest of the poem is saying that we should clean up our act, and that we should clean up the parts of the world that he lists, but the ending is saying that maybe once we wash them and dry them, we shouldn't be allowed to touch the wonderful cleansed world that's pure. It's like when you wash your hands. Would you want to go play in honey or something else that's really sticky? No, you wouldn't, because you would just ruin what all you've done. So to conclude, basically, I would really recommend this poem. It's a good read. It'll really help you reevaluate what should be our priorities and kind of, what we think about when we ruin the environment, different choices that we make as countries. So I would definitely recommend reading it. Thanks.